My estranged father came back on my son's 15th birthday, trying to turn him into a gambling prodigy. When I tried to stop him, he laughed and said, "Don't be so controlling." I didn't even respond. Fast forward to now, he's standing outside my apartment in tears, begging me not to take his life away. My father had the nerve to come back on my son's 15th birthday. I'd just gotten home from a double shift at the hospital, my feet aching and my back stiff, but seeing Tyler's excited face made it worth it. He was tearing into the gift I'd spent weeks saving for, the gaming console he'd talked about nonstop. I was exhausted but happy. Then the knock came, sharp and confident. When I opened the door, I froze. It was my father, Edward, standing there like some kind of ghost from my past, holding a flashy gift bag and wearing a smile that made my stomach knot up. "Hey Maya," he said, like nothing had happened. "It's been a long time." I hadn't seen him since the day I left home at 18, broke and betrayed. Tyler appeared behind me, eyes wide with curiosity. Edward crouched down, introduced himself as Grandpa, and offered the shiny new smartwatch. Tyler, completely dazzled, took the bait instantly. Edward told us he'd moved to our city, that he'd been sober for 6 years, and he even showed me the AA chips to prove it. He cried a little, promised he'd changed, and begged for another chance. Part of me wanted to slam the door, but Tyler was already smiling at him, and my heart sank. Over the next few weeks, Edward kept showing up. He wrote letters, showed proof of a new job and apartment, and finally, after Tyler pleaded with me nonstop, I allowed supervised visits. It hurt to see how quickly Tyler warmed up to him, listening to Edward's stories like he was some kind of hero. Memories flooded back, unwanted and raw. Edward's gambling had destroyed my childhood. We'd been evicted when I was 13, and my mom spiraled into a depression that eventually took her life when I was 16. The worst betrayal came when Edward stole my college fund right after I'd been accepted into nursing school, leaving me homeless and hopeless. But Edward seemed different now. He started helping out with bills and attended Tyler's basketball games. For a moment, I let myself believe things were getting better. Tyler's confidence soared, and he even made new friends. Then I started noticing things. Tyler became secretive, disappearing for hours. Edward bought him expensive gifts, claiming he'd earned it from honest work. Tyler suddenly got obsessed with math, particularly probability, something he'd never cared about before. When I found him scribbling odds calculations in his notebook, my gut twisted painfully. Edward slowly started undermining me. "Men stick together," he'd say to Tyler, smiling warmly, making me seem overly strict. My anxiety hit its peak when Tyler missed an important school event. Panicked, I tracked his phone and found him at some sketchy building downtown. I rushed there, heart pounding, and discovered Tyler sitting at a poker table, counting cards and calculating odds like a seasoned gambler. Edward stood nearby, grinning proudly. Anger surged through me, realizing he'd groomed my son into a gambling prodigy, feeding him lies about easy money and college dreams. I confronted Edward immediately. His gentle facade vanished, replaced by a cold sneer. "Tyler's my investment," he hissed. He accused me of jealousy and threatened to turn Tyler against me. Desperate and furious, I began digging into Edward's activities. My blood ran cold when I discovered he'd opened a credit card in Tyler's name, already maxed out and piling up debt that could ruin Tyler's future. I called the credit card company immediately. They confirmed the card had been opened with Tyler's social security number, but the contact information was an email I didn't recognize and a phone number that wasn't ours. When I explained that Tyler was a minor and couldn't legally enter into a credit agreement, they started the fraud investigation process. While on hold with the fraud department, I noticed a text come through on my phone from Tyler. "Going to hang with Grandpa after school. Don't wait up." I texted back immediately. "No, come straight home. We need to talk." His response came quickly. "Already told him yes. Don't be so controlling. Don't be so controlling." Those weren't Tyler's words. That was Edward talking through him. I felt sick. When the fraud representative came back on the line, I explained the situation, that my estranged father had likely opened the card using my son's information. They advised me to file a police report, which would help remove the fraudulent account from Tyler's credit history. I spent the rest of the day gathering evidence. I printed out the credit report, took photos of the gambling notebook, and made copies of Edward's letters. I even found an old photo album with newspaper clippings about my mother's suicide, where her depression was linked to financial problems caused by my father's gambling. By the time Tyler got home, it was after 7 p.m. He walked in with a new pair of expensive headphones around his neck. "Where did you get those?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He shrugged. "Grandpa got them for me." Said I earned them. "Earned them how?" I pressed. Tyler avoided my eyes. "Just helping him with some stuff. Gambling stuff." I pressed. His head snapped up. "You went through my room? That's invasion of privacy? Tyler, he's using you. He's teaching you to gamble. Do you know that's illegal for someone your age?" Tyler rolled his eyes. "It's just cards, Mom. It's math. I'm good at it. Grandpa says I could get a scholarship for college with my math skills. Is that what he told you? That gambling would pay for college?" I laughed bitterly. "That's what he told me too, right before he stole my college fund." Tyler's face hardened. "He told me you'd say stuff like this. He said you're jealous because he and I have a special connection." My heart broke hearing Edward's words coming out of my son's mouth. "Tyler, there's something you need to know. Your grandfather opened a credit card in your name. It's maxed out. That's identity theft and fraud." Tyler's confidence faltered. "What? No, he wouldn't do that." I showed him the credit report. "This is your name, your social security number. This debt is in your name, Tyler. It will ruin your credit before you even get started in life." Confusion crossed his face. "But he said he was helping me build credit for the future. By maxing out a card and missing payments, that destroys credit. It doesn't build it." I took a deep breath. "I filed a police report. They'll be investigating." Tyler's eyes widened. "You called the cops on Grandpa?" "Mom, how could you? Because what he's doing is illegal and it's hurting you." I was trying not to shout, but my frustration was boiling over. "Tyler, there's so much you don't know about him." "Then tell me," he yelled back. "You never talk about him. You never talk about any of our family." He was right. I'd kept my past locked away, thinking I was protecting him, but my silence had created a vacuum that Edward was all too happy to fill with his lies. "Okay," I said quietly. "Let's talk. I'll tell you everything." We sat at the kitchen table, and I told Tyler the unvarnished truth about Edward, how he'd gambled away our house when I was 13, forcing us to move into a motel, how my mother had spiraled into depression, unable to cope with the constant financial stress and Edward's broken promises, how she'd taken her own life when I was 16, leaving me alone with a father who saw me as nothing more than a potential source of income. I told him about the college fund I'd built working nights at a diner while maintaining a 4.0 GPA, how I'd been accepted to nursing school with a partial scholarship, only to discover Edward had emptied my account, how I'd ended up homeless at 18, sleeping in my car until a coworker let me crash on her couch. Tyler listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. "I never told you because I wanted to protect you from that pain," I finished, "and because I was ashamed. Ashamed that I came from that. Ashamed that I couldn't see through his lies until it was too late." Tyler was quiet for a long moment. "I need some time to think," he finally said, and retreated to his room. I gave him space, hoping the truth would sink in. But the next morning, Tyler was gone. He'd left a note saying he was staying with Edward for a few days to hear his side of the story. My heart sank. Edward had his hooks in deep. I called Tyler's phone repeatedly, but it went straight to voicemail. I texted, begging him to come home, but got no response. I even even drove to Edward's apartment, but no one answered the door. I stood there knocking for nearly 20 minutes, alternating between anger and desperation, before finally giving up and returning home to an empty house that felt colder than ever. After 48 agonizing hours, Tyler finally called me. "Mom, Grandpa explained everything," he said, his voice oddly flat. "He said you're exaggerating about what happened. He said Grandma had mental problems that weren't his fault, and he showed me bank statements proving he's been saving money for my college, not stealing from me." My blood ran cold. Edward was gaslighting my son, just as he'd gaslighted me and my mother for years. "Tyler, he's lying to you. Please come home so we can talk about this." "I don't know who to believe anymore," Tyler said, his voice cracking. "He says you've always been unstable, that you make things up." That was when I knew I needed to fight fire with fire. Edward was using every manipulation tactic in his playbook, and I couldn't counter them with just words. "Tyler, I'm coming to get you. Where are you right now?" He hesitated. "We're at the casino hotel downtown. Grandpa's playing in a tournament." "A casino?" "Of course." I grabbed my keys and drove there immediately, my hands shaking on the steering wheel. The casino was massive, all flashing lights and ringing machines designed to separate people from their money. I found Tyler sitting alone in the hotel lobby, looking small and confused. "Where's Edward?" I asked. "Playing poker. He said he'd be done in an hour." Tyler wouldn't meet my eyes. I sat beside him. "I brought something to show you." I pulled out my phone and showed him photos I'd taken of my old journals, documenting the evictions, the bounced checks, the times we'd gone without electricity or food because Edward had gambled away the bill money. Then I showed him something I'd never shown anyone, the scars on my wrists from my own suicide attempt at 17, after my mother died, and Edward had abandoned me for 3 weeks to go on a gambling binge. "This is what his addiction did to me, Tyler. I almost didn't survive it. I can't watch it happen to you too." Tyler's eyes filled with tears. He seemed so different, so normal. "That's how addiction works. Addicts become master manipulators. They learn exactly what to say to get what they want." Tyler nodded slowly. "He's been teaching me to count cards. He says we're going to Vegas next month for a big tournament, that I can be his good luck charm." My stomach dropped. "Did he ask you to sign anything? Any papers?" Tyler looked away. "Just some forms for the hotel, and something about being his, I don't know, his dependent or something for taxes." I felt sick. "Tyler, we need to go to the police right now. He's committing fraud using your identity." Just then, Edward appeared, his face darkening when he saw me. "Maya, what a surprise." His voice was cold, nothing like the warm, repentant father who'd shown up on my doorstep. "We're leaving," I said firmly, standing up and putting myself between Edward and Tyler. Edward's charm switched on instantly. "Tyler, your mother is overreacting again. Remember what we talked about? How she always blows things out of proportion?" I could see Tyler wavering, the confusion plain on his face. Edward had spent weeks poisoning him against me, and those doubts didn't disappear in an instant. "Tyler," I said quietly, "you don't have to decide right now who's telling the truth. Just come home with me and we'll figure this out." Edward's face hardened. "Tyler, if you leave with her, our deal is off. No Vegas, no college fund, nothing." Tyler looked between us, torn. Then he stood up and moved to my side. "I want to go home, Mom." The relief was overwhelming, but Edward wasn't done. "You ungrateful little—" He caught himself, aware of the public setting. "Fine, go, but this isn't over." His threat hung in the air as we walked away. In the car, Tyler was quiet, processing everything. "I'm sorry, Mom," he finally said. "I wanted so badly to have a grandfather that I ignored all the warning signs." "It's not your fault," I assured him. "He's had decades to perfect his manipulation. I fell for it too, when I was younger." The next day, we went to the police station together and filed a comprehensive report about the identity theft and the credit card fraud. The officer was sympathetic but warned us that these cases could be difficult to prosecute, especially with family members involved. "The best thing you can do is freeze your son's credit and dispute all the fraudulent charges," she advised, "and keep him away from your father." We did exactly that, spending hours on the phone with credit bureaus and filling out fraud affidavits. I thought that would be the end of it, that Edward would slink away once his schemes were exposed. I was wrong. A week later, I got a call from an unknown number while at work. It was Edward. "You think you've won, but you haven't," he said, his voice eerily calm. "Tyler has a gift. He could make millions with his abilities. You're holding him back because you're jealous. Stay away from my son," I warned. "The police are involved now." Edward laughed. "The police don't care about family disputes, but I'll make you a deal. Give me $10,000 and I'll disappear forever. That's a small price to pay for your son's future, isn't it?" I nearly dropped the phone. "Are you blackmailing me? I don't have that kind of money." "You have a week to figure it out," Edward said, "or I start telling Tyler things about you that will make him hate you forever." He hung up before I could respond. My hands were shaking so badly I had to sit down. What things could Edward possibly tell Tyler? I'd already told him the worst parts of my past. Unless Edward was planning to make things up, the way he'd twisted the truth about my mother's suicide. I didn't tell Tyler about the call. He was finally getting back to normal, focusing on school and his legitimate interests. The last thing he needed was more stress. Instead, I called Sarah, a friend from nursing school who had become a lawyer. I explained the situation, including Edward's blackmail attempt. "You need to record him," Sarah advised. "Ohio is a one-party consent state for recordings. Get him to repeat his blackmail demand on tape and we can take that to the police." It was a good plan, but I needed Edward to call me again. I decided to text him. "I'm considering your offer. Can we discuss terms?" He called almost immediately. This time, I was ready. Recording app activated. "So you've come to your senses," Edward said smugly. "I need to know what you're threatening to tell Tyler," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Edward chuckled. "How about the fact that you tried to abort him? That you only kept him because you were too far along when you finally scraped together the money?" My blood ran cold. That was a complete lie. I'd never considered abortion, not for a second, but it was exactly the kind of devastating lie that could damage my relationship with Tyler permanently. "That's not true," I said firmly. "Truth doesn't matter, Maya. Only what Tyler believes. Or how about I tell him that you've been stealing from his college fund to pay for your boyfriend's gambling debts? Ironic, isn't it? Another complete fabrication. I didn't even have a boyfriend, let alone one who gambled." "You're threatening to lie to my son unless I pay you $10,000? I clarified, making sure the recording would be explicit. "Think of it as an investment in your relationship with Tyler," Edward said smoothly. "1 week, Maya. Then I start sharing my memories with my grandson." After he hung up, I immediately sent the recording to Sarah, who confirmed it was clear evidence of blackmail. We took it to the police the next day, and they agreed to pursue charges. But they warned me that Edward would likely be released on bail, and a restraining order would be our best immediate protection. I got the restraining order that afternoon, covering both Tyler and myself. That night, I sat Tyler down and played him the recording of Edward's blackmail attempt. His face went from confusion to shock to anger as he listened. He was going to lie about you like that? To me? Tyler was livid. After everything he said about family being the most important thing, addiction makes people do terrible things, I said gently. It's not personal. He needs money for gambling, and he'll say or do anything to get it. Tyler nodded slowly. I get it now. All those things he taught me. It wasn't because he thought I was special. It was because he wanted to use me. I'm so sorry, honey. I know how much you wanted a relationship with him. Tyler was quiet for a moment. Do you think he'll ever really change? Like, actually get better? The hope in his voice broke my heart. I don't know. Some people do recover from addiction, but it takes real commitment and usually years of work. The next day, I was at work when I got a frantic call from Tyler's school. He hadn't shown up for his afternoon classes. Panic surged through me as I remembered how Edward had lured him away before. I called Tyler's phone repeatedly with no answer. I was about to call the police when I got a text from an unknown number. I have Tyler. $10,000 or you'll never see him again. My blood ran cold. I called the police immediately, showing them the text when they arrived. They took it seriously, especially given the existing blackmail case and restraining order. They started tracking Tyler's phone and the unknown number that had texted me. While waiting for updates, I got another text from the unknown number. Meet at the old factory on Elm Street. Come alone. Bring cash. I showed this to the detective, who shook his head. We'll handle this. Do not go there yourself. But as the hours ticked by with no sign of Tyler, my panic grew. The police were being methodical, getting warrants for phone records and surveillance footage. I couldn't wait. I knew Edward. He was impulsive and dangerous when cornered. I told the police I was going home to rest, but instead, I drove toward the abandoned factory. It was a stupid, reckless decision, but I couldn't sit by while my son was in danger. I parked a block away and approached cautiously, my heart pounding. The factory was dilapidated, windows broken and walls covered in graffiti. I slipped inside through a side door, the rusty hinges creaking ominously. The interior was vast and shadowy, old machinery looming like silent monsters in the dim light filtering through dirty windows. Edward? I called out, my voice echoing. I'm here. Let Tyler go. No response. I moved deeper into the factory, every sense on high alert. Then I heard voices coming from a room to my left. I crept closer, trying to make out the words. She's not coming, is she? That was Tyler's voice, tense but not frightened. She'll come. Edward sounded confident. Your mother always did have a hero complex. I peered through a crack in the door and saw Tyler sitting at a table, hands free, no visible injuries. Edward was pacing nearby, checking his phone repeatedly. Relief flooded through me. Tyler wasn't tied up or hurt, but something seemed off about the whole scene. I pushed the door open. Let him go, Edward. They both turned to me, startled. Edward recovered first, a slow smile spreading across his face. Maya, right on time. Tyler jumped up. Mom, I told you not to come. It's a trap. Before I could process what was happening, two men emerged from the shadows behind me. I recognized one of them from the poker game where I'd found Tyler. The other was a stranger, but the gun in his hand made his role clear enough. Where's the money? The armed man demanded, his voice gruff and impatient. I don't have it, I admitted, trying to keep my voice steady despite the terror coursing through me. The police are on their way. They know I'm here. Edward's smile faltered. You called the cops? After I specifically said to come alone? I didn't. I lied, maintaining eye contact. But they're tracking Tyler's phone. They'll be here any minute. I prayed they would be. The detective had warned me not to come, but surely they were following the same lead I had. The armed man looked nervously at Edward. You said this would be simple. I'm not getting involved in a kidnapping with cops on the way. She's bluffing, Edward insisted, but uncertainty had crept into his voice. I seized the moment of confusion. Tyler, run! I shouted, lunging forward to create a distraction. Tyler bolted for the door while I grappled with Edward. The armed man hesitated, clearly not prepared for the situation to escalate to violence. His partner made a grab for Tyler but missed. Edward shoved me hard against a wall, his face contorted with rage. You've ruined everything. Again. Just like your mother. Spittle flew from his mouth as he screamed. Something in me snapped at the mention of my mother. Years of suppressed anger exploded as I fought back, landing a solid punch to Edward's jaw that sent him staggering backward. The armed man decided this was more trouble than it was worth, and backed toward the exit, gun still raised but clearly wanting no part of this family drama. This is messed up, man. I'm out. His partner followed, leaving Edward alone with me. Edward recovered his balance, rubbing his jaw and glaring at me with pure hatred. You think you've won? This isn't over. It is over, I said firmly, standing my ground despite my shaking legs. Tyler saw exactly who you are today. He'll never trust you again. A flash of genuine pain crossed Edward's face, quickly replaced by cold calculation. I can still ruin you. I'll tell everyone what kind of mother you really are. No one will believe you, I said, surprised by the confidence in my voice. You're a convicted felon with a gambling addiction who just tried to kidnap your own grandson. Your word means nothing. The wail of police sirens in the distance seemed to confirm my words. Edward's face fell as he realized his position. I need to go, he muttered, backing toward a rear exit. Running away again? I called after him. That's what you do best, isn't it? He paused, looking back at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Regret? Shame? Whatever it was gone in an instant as he turned and fled, disappearing into the shadows of the factory. I rushed outside to find Tyler safe, talking to police officers who had just arrived. He ran to me, throwing his arms around me in a fierce hug that nearly knocked me off my feet. Mom, I was so scared you'd get hurt. I held him tight, relief washing over me in dizzying waves. I'm okay. We're both okay. The police quickly organized a search for Edward and his accomplices, taking our statements and assuring us they would find him. Tyler explained that Edward had approached him after school, claiming there was a family emergency. Once they were alone, Edward had revealed his true plan, to use Tyler to pressure me for money. But I texted you a warning from the bathroom, Tyler said, wiping tears from his face. Did you get it? I checked my phone and found a message I'd missed in my panic. Mom, don't believe anything Grandpa says. He's planning something bad. I'm at the old factory on Elm. My clever, brave son had managed to warn me even while being coerced. Pride swelled in my chest, momentarily overwhelming the lingering fear and adrenaline. I'm so sorry I ever doubted you about him, Tyler said, his voice small. You were right all along. I hugged him again. You have nothing to apologize for. Edward is an expert manipulator. He fooled me for years when I was growing up. The police drove us home, promising to post an officer outside our house until Edward was apprehended. As we settled in for the night, exhausted but safe, Tyler asked a question that caught me off guard. Mom, do you think I'll end up like him? Like, is gambling addiction genetic or something? His eyes were wide with worry, searching my face for reassurance. I sat beside him on his bed. Addiction can run in families, but it's not a guarantee. And now that you know the risk, you can be careful. Plus, you have something I never had. What's that? A parent who understands the danger and will help you avoid it. I squeezed his hand, trying to convey all my love and confidence in him. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. I deleted all those gambling apps he made me download, and I threw away the notebook with all the card counting stuff. That's a great start, I said, smiling. And I promise to be more open with you about our family history from now on. No more secrets. The next morning, we got the news. Police had arrested Edward at a bus station trying to leave town. The charges were serious: attempted extortion, identity theft, fraud, and violating a restraining order. With his prior convictions, he was facing significant prison time. The detective who called suggested we might need to testify at the trial, but assured us it would likely be months away. For now, we could focus on healing, and that's what we did. Tyler started seeing a therapist to process everything that had happened. I joined a support group for families affected by gambling addiction, something I should have done years ago. Together, we began rebuilding the trust that Edward had tried so hard to destroy. 2 weeks after Edward's arrest, Tyler came home from school with a thoughtful expression. I've been thinking about what Grandpa said about me having a gift for math. My heart sank. Tyler? No, wait, he interrupted. I do like math. I am good at it, but I want to use it for something positive, not gambling. My guidance counselor says there are scholarships for students who excel in mathematics. Real scholarships, not fake ones Grandpa promised. Relief and pride washed over me. That sounds perfect. Tyler smiled. Maybe I could be an engineer or a statistician, something where I build things instead of taking from people. In that moment, I knew we would be okay. Edward had tried to recreate his own destructive patterns in my son, but he had failed. Tyler had seen the truth and chosen a different path. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. We still had the trial to face, and Tyler would need time to process the betrayal by someone he'd trusted, but we would face it together, stronger for having survived Edward's manipulation. As for me, I finally stopped blaming myself for Edward's reappearance in our lives. I couldn't control his actions, only my response to them. And this time, unlike when I was 18, I had fought back and won. The trial date was set for 3 months out. I tried to focus on getting our lives back to normal, but it wasn't easy. Tyler had nightmares about Edward, and I'd sometimes catch him checking the locks on our doors and windows multiple times before bed. The therapist said it was normal after what we'd been through, but it still broke my heart to see my confident kid so shaken. One night, I found Tyler sitting at the kitchen table at 2 a.m., staring at his phone. Can't sleep? I asked, sliding into the chair across from him. He shook his head. I keep thinking about all the stuff Grandpa taught me. The card counting, the odds calculations. I was really good at it, Mom. My stomach tightened. Tyler. No, I'm not saying I want to gamble, he quickly added. I don't know. It feels weird to be good at something that's so messed up. I reached across the table and took his hand. Being good at math isn't messed up. It's how you use it that matters. He nodded slowly. I guess. You know, I said, there are lots of legit careers that use those same skills. Financial analysts, actuaries, statisticians, they all work with probabilities and risk assessment. Tyler's eyes lit up a little. Really? Absolutely. Your guidance counselor could tell you more about it. That conversation was a turning point. Tyler started researching careers in mathematics and statistics. He even joined the math club at school, channeling his talents in a positive direction. It was like watching a weight lift off his shoulders as he realized he could embrace his abilities without following Edward's destructive path. Meanwhile, I was dealing with the aftermath of Edward's fraud. The credit card company eventually removed the fraudulent charges from Tyler's credit report, but it took dozens of phone calls and a stack of paperwork. I also had to contact every place where Edward might have used Tyler's information: loan companies, online gambling sites, even cell phone providers. During one of these calls, I discovered something that made my blood boil. Edward had taken out a $5,000 personal loan in Tyler's name just 2 days before his extortion attempt. The money had been withdrawn in cash immediately. When I told the detective handling our case, she added it to the growing list of charges against Edward. He was planning to run, she explained. The extortion was his backup plan when the loan money wasn't enough. The knowledge that Edward had been plotting his escape while pretending to reconnect with Tyler made me physically ill. I spent that night crying in my bathroom, trying not to let Tyler hear me. The betrayal felt so deep, so calculated, that it reopened all my childhood wounds. The next morning, I called in sick to work again and drove to the county jail where Edward was being held. I didn't tell Tyler where I was going, just that I had some errands to run. I wasn't even sure why I was going. Maybe I needed closure, or maybe I just wanted to look him in the eye one last time. The jail was cold and sterile, with fluorescent lights that made everyone look sickly. I waited in a plastic chair for almost an hour before they brought Edward out to the visitation room. He shuffled in wearing an orange jumpsuit, his hands cuffed in front of him. He looked older, smaller somehow, without his charming facade to hide behind. He seemed surprised to see me. Maya, he said, sitting down across from me at the metal table. Come to gloat? I shook my head. I came to understand. Edward snorted. Understand what? That I'm a terrible father? I think we established that years ago. I want to know why, I said, keeping my voice steady. Why Tyler? You could have scammed anyone. Why did you have to target your own grandson? Edward's eyes flickered with something. Regret, maybe, or just calculation. It wasn't personal. The kid has a gift. I recognized it because it's the same one I have. Math skills, pattern recognition, quick thinking under pressure, the ability to calculate risk on the fly. He leaned forward. Do you know how rare that is? Tyler could have made millions. As what? Your personal card counter? I couldn't keep the disgust from my voice. He's 15, Dad. A child. Edward shrugged. I started younger. That stopped me cold. What? My father took me to my first poker game when I was 12, Edward said, his voice flat. By 14, I was counting cards at underground games all over the city. By 16, I was making more money than he was. I'd never heard this story before. My grandfather had died before I was born, and Edward rarely talked about him. Your father taught you to gamble? Edward's laugh was bitter. Taught me? He exploited me. I was his golden goose. When I lost, he'd beat me. When I won, he'd take most of the money. Said it was for expenses. I sat back trying to process this. So you decided to do the same thing to Tyler? No. Edward looked genuinely offended. I was going to split everything with him 50-50. Set up a real college fund, not just talk about it. I was going to teach him how to be smart about it, not end up like me. But you were making him commit crimes, I pointed out. Teaching him to lie, to manipulate people. Edward waved his hand dismissively. The casinos are the real criminals. They're designed to suck people dry. So that makes it okay to break the law? To steal Tyler's identity? He had the decency to look slightly ashamed at that. The identity thing, that was a mistake. I was in a tight spot. Some guys were after me for money I owed. The same guys who helped you pressure Tyler? Edward nodded. They were going to break my legs if I didn't pay up. I panicked. I shook my head, disgusted. You haven't changed at all, have you? Still blaming everyone but yourself. I'm going to prison, Maya, he said quietly. Probably for a long time. Isn't that enough? No, I said, standing up. It's not enough for what you did to Tyler, or to me, or to Mom. His face hardened at the mention of my mother. Your mother made her own choices. After you destroyed her life, I was shouting now, not caring who heard. You gambled away everything we had. You left us homeless. I loved her, Edward shouted back, his face red. I loved her, and I couldn't stop gambling, and it killed me to watch what it did to her. Do you think I wanted any of that? Then why didn't you get help? I demanded. Why didn't you stop? Edward deflated, the anger leaving him as quickly as it had come. I don't know. I tried, so many times, but the pull was always stronger than my willpower. I sat back down, suddenly exhausted. Is that supposed to make me feel sorry for you? No, he said, not meeting my eyes. Nothing can excuse what I did. To your mother, to you, to Tyler. We sat in silence for a moment. I studied his face, the deep lines around his eyes, the gray hair, the defeated slump of his shoulders. For the first time I saw him clearly, not as the monster of my childhood or the charming manipulator who'd returned, but as a deeply flawed, broken man who'd never managed to overcome his demons. I won't be at your trial, I finally said. Tyler and I have given our statements. We're done. Edward nodded slowly. I understand. As I stood to leave, he spoke again. Maya, tell Tyler I'm sorry. Not that it matters, but I am. I didn't respond. I just walked out, feeling lighter somehow, as if I'd finally put down a heavy burden I'd been carrying for years. When I got home, Tyler was waiting for me. Where'd you go? He asked, looking up from his homework. I considered lying, but I'd promised him no more secrets. I went to see your grandfather. Tyler's eyes widened. Why? I needed to understand some things, I said, sitting beside him. About him, about our family history. Did you? Tyler asked. Understand? I mean, I thought about it. A little. Enough to know that his problems go back a long way, and they were never about you or me. They were always about him. Tyler nodded thoughtfully. My therapist says addiction is a disease, that grandpa probably couldn't help himself. That's partly true, I said carefully. Addiction is powerful, but we all have choices. Your grandfather had chances to get help, and he chose not to. That's on him, not on the addiction. Do you think he'll ever change? Tyler asked, his voice small. I sighed. I don't know. I hope so, for his sake. But we can't wait around for that to happen. We have to live our lives. Tyler was quiet for a moment. I've been thinking about that a lot, about how I want to live my life. And I don't want to be afraid of becoming like him, Tyler said firmly. I want to use what I'm good at for something positive. I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. That sounds like a plan. The weeks leading up to the trial were busy. Tyler threw himself into school and the math club. I picked up extra shifts at the hospital to help pay off the legal fees and credit monitoring services we now needed. We were both exhausted but determined to move forward. Then, 2 weeks before the trial was set to begin, I got a call from the prosecutor. Ms. Johnson, I wanted to let you know that your father has agreed to a plea deal. I sat down surprised. What kind of deal? He's pleading guilty to all charges in exchange for a slightly reduced sentence. 10 years instead of the potential 15 to 20 he was facing. So there won't be a trial? I asked, relief washing over me. No trial. You and Tyler won't need to testify. After I hung up, I sat on my bed for a long time, processing the news. Part of me had been dreading the trial, dreading having to face Edward again and relive everything in a courtroom. Another part had wanted the satisfaction of seeing him convicted by a jury. But mostly, I was relieved that Tyler wouldn't have to go through that ordeal. When I told Tyler about the plea deal, he seemed relieved too. So it's really over? He asked. It's really over, I confirmed. He'll be in prison for at least 10 years. Tyler nodded, his expression unreadable. Can I ask you something, Mom? Anything. Do you think we should visit him? In prison, I mean? The question caught me off guard. Do you want to? Tyler shrugged. I don't know. Maybe someday. Not now. We don't have to decide that today, I said gently. Or ever, really. It's completely up to you. Up to us, Tyler corrected. We're a team, right? I smiled, blinking back unexpected tears. Right, a team. Life gradually returned to something resembling normal. Tyler's nightmares became less frequent. I stopped jumping every time there was an unexpected knock at the door. We developed new routines, new inside jokes, new ways of being together that weren't shadowed by Edward's presence. 6 months after Edward went to prison, Tyler came home from school practically bouncing with excitement. Mom, guess what? He shouted, dropping his backpack by the door. What? I asked, smiling at his enthusiasm. I got accepted into that summer math program at the university, the one for high school students interested in STEM careers. I hugged him tightly. That's amazing. I'm so proud of you. And, he added, pulling back with a grin, it comes with a scholarship that covers all the costs. I don't need to ask you for money. My heart swelled with pride. Tyler had applied for the program on his own initiative, writing an essay about his interest in probability and statistics. The fact that he'd gotten in, and with a scholarship, was a testament to his hard work and natural abilities. This calls for a celebration, I declared. Anything you want for dinner, your choice. As we sat at our favorite pizza place that night, Tyler suddenly got serious. Mom, can I tell you something? Of course. I've been thinking a lot about Grandpa, about addiction and stuff. I nodded, giving him space to continue. I decided I'm never going to gamble, not even lottery tickets or those scratch-off things. It's just not worth the risk, you know? Relief and pride washed over me. I think that's a wise decision. But I also decided something else, Tyler continued. I'm not going to let what happened define me. I'm going to use my math skills for good things, like engineering or science or something that helps people. I reached across the table and squeezed his hand. You're going to do amazing things, Tyler. I've always known that. He smiled, a little embarrassed by my praise. Thanks, Mom, for everything, for protecting me from Grandpa, for being honest with me, for, not giving up on me when I was being a jerk. I could never give up on you, I said simply. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Tyler rolled his eyes, but I could tell he was pleased. Okay, enough mushy stuff. Can we get ice cream after this? I laughed. Absolutely. As we finished our pizza, I thought about how far we'd come. Edward's return had nearly destroyed us, but somehow we'd emerged stronger. Tyler was thriving, turning potential trauma into motivation. I was finally confronting my own past instead of running from it. We were healing, together. A year after Edward went to prison, I received a letter from him. I almost threw it away unopened, but curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a short note and a check for $5,000, the exact amount of the fraudulent loan he'd taken out in Tyler's name. The note read, Maya, I know money can't fix what I broke, but this is a start. It's from legitimate savings, not gambling winnings. I've been attending GA meetings in prison, one day at a time, right? I don't expect forgiveness. Just wanted you to know I'm trying. Edward. I stared at the check for a long time. Part of me wanted to rip it up out of principle, but another part recognized that this might be the most genuine attempt at amends Edward had ever made. I decided to deposit the check into a separate account, not to use for ourselves, but to hold in trust for Tyler's future education. If Edward was truly changing, that was good for him. But I wasn't ready to let him back into our lives, and I wasn't sure I ever would be. That night, as Tyler and I watched a movie together, I found myself studying his profile. He looked so grown up now, less like the boy who'd been dazzled by Edward's gifts, and more like the young man who'd seen through the manipulation and chosen a different path. What? He asked, catching me staring. Nothing, I said, smiling. Just thinking about how proud I am of you. Tyler rolled his eyes, but he was smiling too. You say that like every day, Mom, because it's true every day. He bumped my shoulder with his. I'm proud of you too, for standing up to Grandpa, for protecting me, for being the strongest person I know. His words caught me off guard. For so long, I'd seen myself as damaged by my past, weakened by Edward's betrayals. I'd never thought of myself as strong. But looking at Tyler, healthy, happy, resilient Tyler, I realized that maybe I was stronger than I'd given myself credit for. We turned our attention back to the movie, but my mind kept wandering. Edward had tried to recreate his own toxic patterns in Tyler, to mold him into a mini version of himself. He'd almost succeeded. But in the end, Tyler had chosen a different legacy, one of honesty, hard work, and using his gifts to build rather than exploit. As for me, I'd finally stopped running from my past. I'd faced Edward, not as the terrified daughter or the angry victim, but as a woman who'd built a good life despite everything he'd done. I'd protected my son, broken the cycle of addiction and exploitation that Edward had tried to perpetuate, and come out the other side. We weren't perfect. Tyler still had moments of fascination with gambling, moments when I'd catch him calculating odds or watching poker tournaments online. I still had nightmares about Edward, still flinched sometimes when the doorbell rang unexpectedly, but we were healing, day by day, choice by choice. And really, that's all anyone can ask for, the chance to heal, to grow, to choose a better path than the one that was shown to us. Edward had his chance and squandered it repeatedly, but Tyler and I, we were making the most of ours.